The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli is a compelling exploration of the cognitive biases and logical fallacies that shape human behavior and decision-making. Drawing on insights from psychology, economics, and behavioral science, Dobelli delves into the common errors people make in thinking and provides practical advice for avoiding these pitfalls. The book encourages readers to recognize and understand the mental shortcuts and flawed patterns of thought that often lead to poor judgments. By highlighting these cognitive traps, Dobelli aims to help individuals think more clearly, make better decisions, and ultimately lead a more rational life. Friends, welcome once again to Book Summary Digest, where we bring you the summary of powerful books in minutes, helping you gain knowledge, inspiration, and practical insights that can easily transform your life. 1. Survivorship bias. We focus on the winners and ignore the losers, leading to skewed perceptions. Example: people study successful entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, but ignore the thousands who failed despite following similar strategies, leading to an incomplete understanding of what truly leads to success. Takeaway: consider the full picture, including failures, to avoid misleading conclusions. 2. Swimmer's body illusion. We confuse selection criteria with results. Example: a person sees Olympic swimmers with lean, toned bodies and assumes swimming will give them the same physique. However, professional swimmers are often born with ideal body proportions for the sport, such as long limbs and low body fat, which contribute to their success rather than being solely a result of swimming. Takeaway: correlation does not imply causation. 3. Clustering illusion. We see patterns in random data. Example: a person notices that several lottery winners come from the same small town and assumes something special about the location increases their chances of winning. In reality, the clustering of winners is just a random pattern, but the mind perceives it as meaningful rather than a natural outcome of probability. Takeaway: be skeptical of perceived patterns in small data sets. 4. Social proof. We follow the crowd, even when it's irrational. Example: a person chooses a crowded restaurant over an empty one, assuming the busy spot must have better food. In reality, the crowd may be due to random factors, such as location or trends, but the person follows the behavior of others instead of making an independent judgment. Takeaway: question herd behavior and think independently. 5. Sunk cost fallacy. We continue investing in a losing proposition because of past investments. Example: a person continues watching a boring 3-hour movie because they already spent an hour on it. Even though they're not enjoying it, they refuse to stop, believing that quitting would waste the time already invested, instead of realizing that walking away would free up time for something more enjoyable. Takeaway: cut your losses and focus on future benefits. 6. Reciprocity. We feel obligated to return favors, even when unnecessary. Example: donating to a charity after receiving a free gift. A store gives out free samples of a new snack, and customers feel obligated to buy it even if they wouldn't have otherwise. The small gift creates a sense of indebtedness, leading people to reciprocate by making a purchase. Takeaway: be aware of manipulative tactics that exploit this bias. 7. Confirmation bias. We seek information that confirms our beliefs and ignore contradictory evidence. Example: only reading news that aligns with your political views. A person who believes in astrology only remembers times when horoscopes seemed accurate, but ignores instances when they were wrong. They actively seek out information that supports their belief while disregarding evidence that contradicts it, reinforcing their existing viewpoint. Takeaway: actively seek out opposing viewpoints. 8. Authority. Bias. We overvalue opinions from authority figures. Example: trusting a doctor's advice without questioning it. A person blindly follows a doctor's advice to take a specific medication without researching side effects, simply because the doctor is an authority figure. Even if there are better alternatives, they trust the recommendation without question, assuming expertise always equals correctness. Takeaway: even experts can be wrong. Think critically. 9. Contrast effect. We judge things differently based on comparisons. Example: a person tries on an expensive $2,000 suit first, then a $100 shirt. The shirt seems cheap in comparison, so they buy it without hesitation, even though they might have considered it overpriced if they hadn't seen the suit first. Takeaway: be aware of how context influences perception. 10. Availability bias. We overestimate the importance of information that's readily available. Example: fearing plane crashes after hearing about one despite their rarity. After hearing about a plane crash on the news, a person believes flying is extremely dangerous, despite statistics showing it's much safer than driving. The vividness and frequency of media coverage make the risk feel greater than it actually is. Takeaway: base decisions on data, not anecdotes. 11. The "it'll get worse before it gets better" fallacy. We fall for false promises of improvement. Example: staying in a bad job because things might improve. A company implements a new ineffective business strategy and profits start declining. Instead of reconsidering the approach, executives insist that the downturn is just a temporary phase and that things will improve soon, even without evidence, mistaking failure for a necessary step toward success. Takeaway: be wary of vague promises without evidence. 12th. Story bias. We prefer stories over raw data. Example: believing a startup success story without analyzing its financials. After a successful entrepreneur shares a story about dropping out of college and building a billion-dollar company, people believe dropping out leads to success. They ignore countless unsuccessful dropouts because the compelling narrative overshadows the less exciting but more common reality. Takeaway: focus on facts, not narratives. 13. Hindsight bias. We believe we predicted an event after it happens. Example: claiming you knew a stock would crash after it does. After a stock market crash, an investor claims they knew it was going to happen even though they made no predictions beforehand. They reconstruct their memory to make past events seem obvious and inevitable, ignoring the uncertainty that existed at the time. Takeaway: acknowledge the unpredictability of events. 14. Overconfidence effect. We overestimate our knowledge and abilities. Example: investors thinking they can beat the market. A driver believes they have above-average skills and take risky maneuvers, assuming they won't get into an accident. Despite statistics showing most people think they're better drivers than they actually are, they remain overly confident in their abilities, ignoring potential dangers. Takeaway: be humble and recognize your limitations. 15th. Chauffeur knowledge. We mistake superficial knowledge for expertise. Example: people who parrot opinions without understanding the subject. A motivational speaker delivers a captivating talk on success, using quotes and theories they've memorized. However, when asked a deep, unexpected question, they struggle to respond. They have the appearance of expertise but lack true understanding, much like a chauffeur reciting a professor's lecture without grasping its meaning. Takeaway: seek true expertise, not just confidence. 16. Illusion of control. We believe we can control uncontrollable events. Example: gamblers thinking they can influence dice rolls. A gambler rolls dice a certain way, believing their technique influences the outcome. Even though the result is purely random, they feel a sense of control, convincing themselves that their actions can change the odds. Takeaway: accept uncertainty and focus on what you can control. 17. Incentive super response tendency. We respond excessively to incentives. Example: salespeople pushing unnecessary products to meet targets. A company rewards customer service employees based on the number of calls they handle. To maximize bonuses, employees rush through calls, providing worse service. Instead of improving customer satisfaction, the incentive encourages behavior that meets the metric but defeats the original goal. Takeaway: align incentives with desired outcomes. 18. Regression to the mean extreme events tend to be followed by more average ones. Example: a sports team performing poorly after a winning streak. A soccer player has an amazing season, and fans call them a superstar. The next season, their performance declines slightly, and people assume they got worse. In reality, the initial success was partly due to luck, and their performance naturally returned closer to their average level. Takeaway: don't overreact to outliers. 19. Outcome bias. We judge decisions based on outcomes rather than the decision-making process. Example: praising a risky investment that happened to pay off. A coach makes a risky last-minute decision that leads to victory, and everyone praises their genius. If the team had lost, the same decision would have been criticized as foolish. Instead of evaluating the decision itself, people judge it solely based on the final result. Takeaway: evaluate decisions based on logic, not results. 20. Paradox of choice. More options lead to worse decisions. Example: struggling to choose from a large menu. A shopper wants to buy jam, but feels overwhelmed by 30 different flavors at the store. Unable to decide, they leave without buying anything. Too many options create anxiety and paralysis, making choice harder instead of easier. Takeaway: limit options to reduce decision fatigue. 21. Liking bias. We favor people we like, even if they're wrong. Example: supporting a friend's business idea despite its flaws. A hiring manager favors a job candidate because they share the same hobbies, overlooking their lack of qualifications. Their personal liking for the candidate clouds their judgment, making them perceive them as more competent than they actually are. Takeaway: separate personal feelings from objective judgment. 22nd. Endowment effect. We value things more simply because we own them. Example: overpricing your car when selling it. A person tries to sell an old couch for $500, even though similar ones sell for $200. Because they own it, they overvalue it emotionally, believing it's worth more than what buyers are willing to pay. Takeaway: be objective about the value of your possessions. 23rd. Coincidence. We see meaning in random events. Example: believing a lucky charm improves your chances. A person dreams about an old friend and then unexpectedly receives a message from them the next day. They believe it's a mysterious sign, even though it's just a random coincidence with no deeper meaning. Takeaway: recognize randomness and avoid superstitions. 24. Groupthink. we conform to group opinions, suppressing dissent. Example, teams making poor decisions to maintain harmony. In a meeting, a team agrees on a flawed marketing strategy because no one wants to challenge the boss's idea. Even though some members have doubts, they stay silent to maintain harmony, leading to poor decision-making. Takeaway: encourage diverse perspectives and critical thinking. 25th, neglect of probability. We ignore statistical likelihoods. Example, fearing shark attacks more than car accidents. A person refuses to fly because they fear a plane crash but drives long distances despite a much higher risk of a car accident. They focus on fear rather than actual probabilities, ignoring the fact that flying is statistically safer than driving. Takeaway: base decisions on probabilities, not emotions. 26. Scarcity error. We overvalue scarce resources. Example, buying limited edition items impulsively. A shopper rushes to buy a limited edition watch, even though they don't really need it. The perceived scarcity makes it seem more valuable, even if the limitation is just a marketing tactic. Takeaway: assess value based on utility, not scarcity. 27th, base rate neglect. We ignore general statistics in favor of specific information. Example, assuming a quiet person is a librarian rather than a salesperson. A person hears that a startup founder became a billionaire and decides to quit their job to start a company, believing success is likely. They ignore the base rate. Most startups fail and focus only on the rare success story. Takeaway: consider base rates when making judgments. 28. Gambler's fallacy. We believe past random events affect future ones. Example, thinking a coin is due for heads after multiple tails. A gambler sees a roulette wheel land on red 5 times in a row and bets on black, believing black is due to appear. They ignore the fact that each spin is independent and past outcomes have no effect on future results. Takeaway: each random event is independent. 29. The anchor. We rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive. Example, negotiating a salary based on an initial low offer. A car dealer first shows a customer a $50,000 luxury car before presenting a $30,000 option. The second car seems like a great deal by comparison, even though it might still be overpriced. The initial high price serves as an anchor, influencing the customer's perception of value. Takeaway: be aware of anchoring effects in decision-making. 30. Induction. We generalize from specific observations. Example, assuming all swans are white after seeing only white swans. A farmer notices that the sun rises every morning and assumes it always will. However, this pattern doesn't guarantee the future, just as the turkey who is fed daily assumes safety until the day it is slaughtered. Past observations don't always predict future events. Takeaway: avoid overgeneralizing from limited data. 31. Loss aversion. We fear losses more than we value gains. Example, holding on to losing stocks to avoid realizing a loss. An investor refuses to sell a declining stock, fearing the loss more than they value potential gains elsewhere. Even though holding onto it may worsen their losses, they cling to it to avoid admitting defeat. Takeaway: focus on long-term outcomes, not short-term losses. 32nd. Social loafing. We exert less effort in groups. Example, team members slacking off in group projects. In a group project, one member puts in minimal effort, assuming others will pick up the slack. Because responsibility is shared, they feel less pressure to contribute, leading to an overall weaker team performance. Takeaway: Assign clear responsibilities to avoid free riding. 33rd, exponential growth. We underestimate the power of compounding. Example, ignoring the long-term impact of small savings. A person is surprised when a viral video gains 1 million views overnight after taking a week to reach 50,000. They underestimate exponential growth, where small early increases lead to massive acceleration over time. Takeaway, think long-term and harness compounding. 34. Winner's curse. The winner of an auction often overpays. Example, overbidding in art auctions. At an auction, a bidder wins a rare collectible by paying far more than its actual value. They feel regret afterward, realizing that if they were the highest bidder, they likely overpaid due to competition-driven overestimation. Takeaway, set limits and stick to them. 35th, fundamental attribution error. We overemphasize personality over situational factors. Example, blaming a colleague's lateness on laziness rather than traffic. A manager sees an employee arrive late and assumes they are lazy and irresponsible, without considering external factors like traffic or a family emergency. They attribute the behavior to personality rather than situational circumstances. Takeaway, consider external factors before judging. 36. False causality. We assume causation from correlation. Example, believing ice cream sales cause drownings. Both increase in summer. A school notices that students who bring expensive laptops get better grades and concludes that owning a high-end laptop improves academic performance. In reality, wealthier students may have access to better education and resources, making the laptop a correlation, not the cause of success. Takeaway, look for evidence of causation, not just correlation. 37th, halo effect. We let one positive trait influence our overall judgment. Example, assuming attractive people are more competent. A well-dressed job candidate makes a great first impression, leading the interviewer to assume they are also highly competent and intelligent. Their polished appearance creates a halo that influences perception, even without evidence of their actual skills. Takeaway, evaluate traits independently. 38th, alternative paths. We ignore alternative outcomes. Example, celebrating a successful investment without considering other options. A famous actor credits their success to hard work and perseverance, ignoring the countless equally talented actors who worked just as hard but never got a big break. They overlook the many alternative paths where luck played a crucial role. Takeaway, consider what could have happened differently. 39. Forecast illusion. We overestimate our ability to predict the future. Example, financial analysts making inaccurate stock predictions. An economist confidently predicts the stock market's performance for the next year, and people trust their forecast. When the prediction turns out wrong, few remember, because new forecasts replace the old ones, creating the illusion that experts can reliably predict the future despite frequent inaccuracies. Takeaway, be skeptical of long-term forecasts. 40th conjunction fallacy. We assume specific conditions are more likely than general ones. Example, believing Linda is a bank teller and a feminist is more likely than Linda is a bank teller. A person hears about a woman who is outspoken and passionate about social justice. When asked which is more likely, that she is a bank teller or a bank teller active in a feminist movement, they choose the latter, even though adding details makes the scenario less probable, not more. A person reads about a man who is very health conscious and loves running. When asked which is more likely that he is a doctor or a doctor who runs marathons, they choose the latter, even though the second option is a subset of the first and therefore less probable. A tourist learns that a woman is very detail-oriented and organized. When asked which is more likely, that she is an accountant or an accountant who loves puzzles, they choose the latter, forgetting that the second option is necessarily less probable than the broader category. Takeaway: simpler explanations are often more probable. 41st, framing. We react differently to the same information presented differently. Example: preferring 90% fat-free over 10% fat. A doctor tells a patient that a surgery has a 90% survival rate, making it sound safe. If instead they said it has a 10% death rate, it would seem riskier, even though both statements present the same facts, just framed differently. Takeaway: be aware of how framing influences decisions. 42nd, action bias. We prefer action over inaction, even when it's counterproductive. Example: goalkeepers diving during penalty kicks, even though staying center is more effective. A soccer goalie jumps to one side during a penalty kick, even though staying in the center might give them a better chance of blocking the shot. They feel the need to do something even when the best action might be inaction. Takeaway: sometimes doing nothing is the best choice. 43rd, omission bias. We view harmful actions as worse than harmful inactions. Example: criticizing a doctor for a wrong treatment more than for doing nothing. A parent chooses not to vaccinate their child, fearing potential side effects. Even though the risk of disease is far greater, they feel less responsible for harm caused by inaction than harm resulting from a decision they actively made. Takeaway: evaluate outcomes, not just actions. 44. Self-serving bias. We attribute successes to ourselves and failures to external factors. Example: taking credit for a team's success but blaming others for its failure. A student gets an A on a test and credits their intelligence and hard work. But when they fail the next one, they blame the teacher's unfair questions instead of their own lack of preparation. Takeaway: take responsibility for both successes and failures. 45th, hedonic treadmill. We adapt to improvements and return to baseline happiness. Example: buying a new car but soon taking it for granted. A person gets a big raise and feels happier for a few months, but soon their satisfaction returns to its previous level. They start craving an even higher salary, constantly chasing new achievements without ever feeling permanently fulfilled. Takeaway: focus on experiences, not material possessions. 46. Self-selection bias. We draw conclusions from non-representative samples. Example: online surveys skewing toward tech-savvy individuals. A fitness influencer's workout program has glowing reviews, but only from people who completed it. Those who quit early due to difficulty or lack of results are absent from the testimonials, creating a misleading impression of its effectiveness. Takeaway: ensure samples are representative. 47th. Association bias. We associate things based on superficial similarities. Example: assuming a well-dressed person is competent. A person had a terrible experience at a hotel with red decor and later avoids all red-themed hotels, believing they will also be bad. They irrationally associate the color with poor service, even though the two are unrelated. Takeaway: judge based on evidence, not appearances. 48. Beginner's luck. We attribute initial success to skill rather than chance. Example: winning at poker during your first game. A first-time poker player wins several hands in a row and believes they have a natural talent for the game. They don't realize their success is just random chance, not skill, and may overestimate their abilities. Takeaway: don't confuse luck with skill. 49th, cognitive dissonance. We resolve conflicting beliefs by ignoring evidence. Example: smokers downplaying health risks. A smoker knows that smoking is harmful but justifies it by saying, "My grandfather smoked his whole life and lived to 90." To reduce the discomfort of conflicting beliefs, they rationalize their behavior instead of changing it. Takeaway: acknowledge and address conflicting information. 50. Hyperbolic discounting. We prefer smaller, immediate rewards over larger, delayed ones. Example: choosing 50 today over 100 in a year. A person chooses to receive $50 today instead of $100 in a year, even though waiting would give them double the money. The immediate reward feels more valuable than the larger future gain, leading to short-term thinking. Takeaway: prioritize long-term gains over short-term pleasures. 51. Because justification. We are swayed by explanations containing because, even if nonsensical. Example: agreeing to a request simply because it includes a reason. A person cuts in line and says, "Can I go ahead because I'm in a hurry?" Others comply, even though the excuse isn't special. The word because makes the request sound more justified, triggering automatic compliance. Takeaway: scrutinize justifications even when they seem logical. 52nd, decision fatigue. We make worse decisions after a long period of decision-making. Example: judges granting fewer paroles later in the day. After a long day of making tough choices at work, a person struggles to pick a dinner option and just orders fast food. Their mental energy is depleted, making even small decisions feel overwhelming. Takeaway: make important decisions when mentally fresh. 53rd, contagion bias. We avoid things associated with negative events. Example: refusing to wear a sweater worn by a criminal. A person refuses to wear a used jacket that once belonged to a criminal, even though the jacket itself is perfectly fine. They irrationally feel that negative traits have transferred to the object. Takeaway: separate objects from their associations. 54. The problem with averages. We overlook variability within averages. Example: assuming everyone earns the average salary. A school boasts that its students have an average salary of $100,000 after graduation. However, a few extremely high earners skew the average, while most graduates make far less. The number is misleading because it doesn't reflect typical outcomes. Takeaway: look beyond averages to understand distributions. 55th, motivation. Crowding. Extrinsic rewards can undermine intrinsic motivation. Example: paying children to read reduces their natural love for books. A company starts paying employees for tasks they once did voluntarily out of passion. Over time, they lose intrinsic motivation and only work for the money. When the payments stop, so does their enthusiasm, as the external reward replaces their internal drive. Takeaway: balance extrinsic and intrinsic motivators. 56. Twaddle tendency. We fill silence with meaningless talk. Example: rambling during a presentation to avoid pauses. A politician speaks for 10 minutes without actually answering the question, using complicated jargon and vague statements. The audience mistakes the excessive words for intelligence, even though nothing meaningful was said. Takeaway: embrace silence. It's often more powerful. 57, Will Rogers' phenomenon, moving an item between groups, can change averages without real improvement. Example, reclassifying patients to improve hospital statistics. A hospital reclassifies its mild cancer cases into a low-risk group and its severe cases into a high-risk group. Survival rates improve in both groups, not because treatments got better, but because shifting patients between categories changed the statistics without changing actual outcomes. Takeaway: be skeptical of statistical manipulations. If you appreciate our efforts, please like, share, and subscribe our channel, Book Summary Digest, as it is absolutely free for you. See you soon in our next video, which is the part 2 of this book summary.